So I'm recording the talk. Okay, so let me start from the first slide. So today we'll talk about large language models for scientific research. So the outline of the presentation will be first, I'll talk about scientific research productivity. What are the recent findings? What are large language models? How they can be used for scientific research? The limitations of these models, and for ChatGPT in particular. I'll conclude and we'll open to Q&A. Okay. So first about scientific research productivity. So this is very, I find this topic very, very interesting. So here I've highlighted like one report and one article. So the first report was written by Oxford Economics. It's a consultancy. And the topic of the report was the state of scientific research productivity. So there's no clear trend overall. I mean, some people have documented in the past that productivity has declined. You know, they look at, so how do you measure, you know, productivity in scientific research? This is difficult. They can count the number of patents, publication in academia, etc., and you divide by something equivalent to the number of researchers. So this is a very crude measure of productivity. Anyhow, so in this report, they have interviewed experts, they did surveys, and they come up with the conclusion that that it depends, right? It depends on the country, the industry, and the data source. So what it suggests that you see some bit of decline in productivity in applied research, okay, especially in pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, but not in basic research. Okay, and it depends also on countries. So for basic research, they will look at scientific publication, for instance. 4 critical drivers. So they identify 4 critical drivers for scientific productivity. Is the increased complexity of the field, right? So just to keep up in your subfield around your bigger field, it becomes more difficult because there's a more scientific research output. Bit of depending on your organization, there's a bit of short-termism. So you know you have to report more frequently. You have to show something, you know, that in the past 6 months. So the being too short-term can be detrimental, right, to research, at least for long-term research. There's more collaboration and sometimes outsourcing of research. And this can be difficult to do, right? So we see more collaboration between, for instance, between industries and academia, between universities, and sometimes, you know, more people are involved. There's more coordination issues, but at the same time, the output could be greater. Okay, and also governments are always financially constrained, and you might not have the support that you require. The second piece of information I found interesting was that an article, an editorial in the Scientific American. That is like, it's from maybe 2011, but I think it's still valid. So just I'll read to you an excerpt. It says that most scientists finance their labs by applying to government agencies and private foundations for grants. Right? So in the US, it'd be the National Science Foundation or NIH for health, medical science, etc. In 2007, a US government study found that university faculty members spend about 40% of their research time navigating the bureaucratic labyrinth, and the situation is no better in Europe. Right? So they're researchers, but they've passed, they spend 40% of their time, you know, chasing money for grant application, and so it would be at least unproductive time for research, right? So there's kind of gain of productivity, and of course here we want to explore will AI help, you know, to reduce that 40% to maybe something more manageable, maybe to 10%. Okay. So what are like large language models? So these are like the latest models in the field of natural language processing. So they process and generate natural language, and they're trained on vast amount of data from, you know, like open data from the internet, you know, publication, books, articles, websites, etc. And they learn like patterns in language. So they learn the grammar, they learn the words, they learn the pattern, how these words are used, the context, and so on. Some of the most well-known models include OpenAI's GPT series, so including the ChatGPT, but they had the GPT-3 and now they have GPT-4, and soon they probably have GPT-5. Google's had Lambda on Bard. So Lambda, I don't know if you recall, it was a model that was used by Google's engineer, and in the AI for Good series, we had a talk. We had a talk about it, and the Google engineer thought that Lambda was sentient. Right? Sentient, but it was conscious. So it is, like, of course, very, very debatable. But anyway, so he thought that Lambda was conscious, and he was fired maybe for that. But Bard is a competitor to ChatGPT. It's available only in the US so far. At least it's not available in Europe. When I'm here, I'm in Europe today. So, but it's something similar to ChatGPT. And Metas has a model called like Llama, and he's doing also a lot of research in the field. So he made a lot of research, and now he has made like AI really like a mainstream. Right? So here you just see the publication. They're all like you can read them on the internet. What is ChatGPT? So ChatGPT is just one of these models. So it is a large language models, and it has also used the humans to give feedbacks to its response, right? So that it's so it's a bit more advanced than the typical large language models. But so it's ChatGPT, so you can ask him. You can go. I'm sure many of you have tried it. If you haven't tried, just go to OpenAI ChatGPT, and it's free to use. So it says that, as a language model, you can do Q&As, answering questions, you can provide information. Point 3, you can generate text. You can translate languages, can summarize text, and write creatively. Right? And it's evolving all the time. So how can they be used for scientific research? Right? This is the topic of today. So I just give you samples, but really the use cases are almost infinite, right? I'm sure you play around with it, you get ideas, and so it's really something that a tool that's available to all of us, and it's for us to experiment and see what works best for us. So this talk is really to give you some ideas, and maybe that's something that you want to discover by yourself, or try by yourself. So you can generate or edit text for research papers, brand proposals, do help for presentations, write scientific documents, reports, can analyze large amount of text data, identify trends, patterns, sentiments, summarize scientific papers, abstract, or a blog post. It can generate code, so it can be very useful for coding. It can explain new concept. It can simulate test subjects. It's a bit strange, but I'll go over that. It can test new ideas, right? It can simulate a journal referee or a journal editor. This model can be enhanced with what they call like plugging tools, and it can help you create. Teaching materials, right? So the ones who are researchers in universities have also some teaching load. So it can help them help them for teaching. So first examples, I'll go over some examples, give you some ideas. So first one, grant application, the prompt. So this is using a ChatGPT, but there's just the free version here. So prepare a proposal for NSF, or National Science Foundation grant, to study long COVID among high school seniors, the high school senior population in the US. Okay, so that's it. This is what I did. But you can give more details, right? You can say, I want to study, Massachusetts, I want to study students in public schools, or so you can refine it. You can give as much details as you want. So here you see the output of ChatGPT, and I find it's pretty good. I mean, myself, I haven't never applied to the NSF, but it looks pretty good to me. So here this is the output. So let's go briefly, but we won't go for all the details. But this is name, address, to the National Science Foundation. It gives so it has different parts. This application, project title, understanding the consequences of long COVID on high school seniors, implications for academic achievement and well-being. Okay, the summary of the project, the objectives, the objectives. The objectives, and So for instance, determine the prevalence of long COVID symptoms among high school seniors, investigate the impact on long COVID on academic achievements, grades, etc. The methods, right? This is the next page. So we'll use surveys, interviews, medical assessments. So you'll have to work with medical professionals, right? You do data analysis, and then you conclude with some policy recommendation. They have section on budget, timeline, how much it will take, the expected outcome, and the conclusion of the report, right? So if you have done it before, you can reuse a past application, right? So that maybe you don't have to write from scratch. And you can say, okay, I did an application 2 years ago. I want to, reuse what I did. I want to replace this by that, or, change this theme, and it will do it for you. Okay, you'll have to review the document, of course, so it's not perfect, but it can be a great help. Summarization, so we mentioned that before. So here's very depending on your field, the scientific output, at least in basic research, is enormous. Right? In all the fields, it's very difficult to keep track. So even in the field of AI, I think it's estimated there's maybe 100 papers published or working papers every day, right? 100 per day. So who has the time to read all of them, right? So here I ask ChatGPT to summarize a blog post, not the paper itself, but a blog post about this paper, or I think it's the paper by Facebook Meta AI to teach the machine 1,100 languages. So it means so go beyond English, Spanish, Chinese, and so on. So very rare languages, and they have interesting techniques where they make people read religious texts in different languages, and the model, this model can learn all these languages, which is very useful. So it can summarize. Still limited a bit by the size of the text, so you might have to cut the articles in chunks to get a summary. For coding, so coding is very interesting, especially in scientific research. Many scientists are not trained coders, right? You're specialists in your own field, in physics, in biology, and so on. But many PhDs have learned coding by themselves, right? Or maybe took some classes in college, possibly. But most people are not professional coders, are not like developers, right? They're not developers like we find at Google and Facebook. So you are your domain expert, plus you have to code. And most I think most scientific areas require some coding, and this can really help, right? So here, for instance, I did a simple example to translate R code into Python. So it's like linear regression. So this is one R code. I say, okay, rewrite the same code in Python, and then I tried it. Right? I tried the code, and it works. It's not perfect, right? Sometimes it have use functions that doesn't exist, so you have to guide it. But some of the code sometimes doesn't work, but it can self-correct, and it can help. Sometimes it could be so maybe not that great. Maybe it's better to do it by yourself. So it's your judgment, right? But I find it can be useful. You have to know a minimum, right? I think the one lesson of this presentation, that you have to be an expert in something. You have to know nothing and to use this, I don't think it's a good idea, right? So you really have to have a bit of minimum knowledge, a bit of even to know, for instance, how to do the basic, and then you can interpret the output and correct it. If you don't know anything, that's very difficult to use, and I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, but for instance, also one very useful example is to ask ChatGPT, comment my code, right? Very often, people they don't comment their code, so that you can comment your code. You can even explain a code, right? You can you get the code from GitHub, or a colleague give it to you, but it's a bit obscure. You can ask ChatGPT, explain me the code. So it go line by line and tell you what it does. So it's very useful. In Python, there's also some norms of how you write variables and so on. So sometimes sometimes the code that you have doesn't follow all the norms. So you can say, follow this codification, and it will change the name of variables and so on. So these, I find it very useful. So it could be ChatGPT, but you find it in the form of Copilot with Microsoft, and I think they're all developing this kind of AI as AI tools for coding. I think everybody is going to use it. It's a bit like word correction in Word, right? It's autocomplete in Word, so it's very similar to that. So I think this is something that everybody will use. Explain new concepts, right? So this is, I'm sure you have tried it. So you have to be, you can, say wrong things, but you still have to check. So here I just ask, to tell me what is a fine tuning of a large language models, and I think its answer is pretty good, right? So it's so it says fine tuning of a large language models refers to the process of further training a pre-trained language models of specific tasks on a specific task or domain to improve its performance adapted to particular context, right? So it means that you take a model that is like already out there and try to specialize it to your own data set or to your own field. It can test new ideas. So here, so you talk to a colleague, you talk to a friend. So here I'm asking ChatGPT, is this a good idea to study long COVID? What is the example I had before for my NSF grant? Is it a good idea to study long COVID among teenagers, right? And show me why it's not a good idea, right? So here it gives me a list of reasons, right? Limited data, ethics, informed consent, privacy, confidentiality. You might not be able to guarantee that. Emotional and psychological impact, because it's a young, teenagers are it's a young population. Sample size, very few young people have got COVID, so maybe your population is too small to have something significant, and you might not have all the resources and expertise, right? So suppose this is the idea that I have, but I want to know what are the what would be the arguments against my idea, and I think it'd be useful, so I can refine my thinking. But you can do that for anything that you want, like a new projects or student projects, or like a PhD students comes to you, say this is what I want to do. You can say, you can brainstorm. Yeah, sounds good, but maybe what are the reasons why it might not be that good. And here I won't go over this, but this is the opposite. Why it is interesting to study long COVID among teenagers. So say unique population has great public health implications. So even the numbers maybe of teenagers suffering from long COVID, it's not like millions probably, but still you will have an impact on their life. Okay. Next page. So this is kind of a funny example. So you can simulate anyone. I mean, you can simulate, do role play. So here, as I simulate the journal editor and journal referee. So you have to publication, you have to deal with that. So here, this is so this is I asked the ChatGPT to write 2 letters. So one letter is written to Albert Einstein. Okay, so my German is a bit rusty, so I won't be able to translate it. But this is so this is the article where he introduced E is equal to mc squared. Okay, so this is the title in German. You can Google it. So here the first letter is rejecting the paper. Okay, so you see, okay, so thanks for your submission. I appreciate your work, your effort. Our team of reviewers and I have carefully evaluated your article, taking into consideration its potential contributions to the field of physics. Regrettably, we have come to the decisions that your article doesn't align with the scope of objective of an LLM physics. Okay. And the evaluation later, you can also add reasons. Some people debate that maybe this article at the time was not complete, that is a bit circular, that weaknesses in the thing, that it's possible. So you can add the reasons, versus you are the editor, the referee give you 5 reasons why the paper shouldn't be published. You say, ChatGPT, these are the 5 reasons, write me a nice letter to Professor Einstein, why we don't want to publish it now, maybe in the future. Then the second letter is somehow easier. You accept the paper, right? So I'm pleased to inform you that your article has been accepted for publication, etc. And that it's a great work, and it's very clear, super paper, and we're very grateful that you submitted your paper to our journal. Okay. So look forward in the future with referee and editors using AI to write to you, or maybe even one day to review your papers. Or you can even review other papers with the help of AI. This page is about plugins. So I think this is, so you might have read a lot of stories about that ChatGPT cannot do math, right? It's very bad at arithmetics, or you do a little bit, gets confused by stuff. It's a bit natural, right? Language processing, we speak, we are masters of language, but we're not masters of math, right? Now you have to multiply very long numbers with many digits. It's very difficult to do it in our brain using common vocabulary, right? So maybe natural language is not great to do like computation or to do some very like specific domain activities. So they have what they call a plugins. So they be like apps, a bit like almost like apps for your phone, right? For your Android phone, your iPhone. So they specialize. And so here is so I give you the link, but then you can you have different apps or these are what they call like plugins. And if the ChatGPT feels that it needs to call the app, it will call the app. It will be almost like an API and get the results. So for that's something that we heard a lot is Wolfram AI. So Wolfram, I think they invented the Mathematica, this kind of scientific software. So they can do calculation without errors, right? So you have two numbers you will add, there'll be no errors. So what ChatGPT will do, or we recognize that you ask ChatGPT, you ask him or ask it to do an addition, it will call Wolfram AI and return the results without errors. Okay, so this will be this is very interesting because in your own field, right? I know whatever you field, you could maybe build or for external audience or internally for your team, like or transform one of your tools that you use, that you trust. It could be a Simulink toolbox from MATLAB or something like that. Make it as a plugin, and link it to ChatGPT or an LLM or your own version of LLM. So it could be a very powerful. And then the ChatGPT just would be like a interaction device, right, to query your tool. Okay. Next page. This is great for create teaching materials, right? So usually people who teach, you put a lot of, I mean, some professors could put a lot of effort when, assistant professor, the first year, and then the after year, they will tend to teach the same materials, right? Because it's a big fixed cost, right? To generate all, the teaching materials, exercise, questions, exams, practice exercise, and so on. So this really can really boost productivity, can help you for lesson planning. I've tried it. It's quite incredible. Right? You can say, I want to teach this topic in a workshop of over like 2 months in the summer, and it will give you, week by week, what subject to teach. I mean, you can also tell ChatGPT what you want to teach, and give you guidelines, intro of the course. You will write something if you want to advertise it on in the chat room or in your department. You will write the ad for this. So this is really great, right? So this is something it's a low-hanging fruit, doesn't need a lot of intellectual power, but it can save you a lot of time. You can create like student questions for exam, or you give a paper and you can so let's see an example here. It's really like it's really incredible. So here, for instance, I gave a paper, like a summary, the intro and conclusion of the paper, and I ask, so the question you can send to the students, or maybe this is your paper, you present it in a seminar, and say, what questions might come up? Right? So I want to prepare my seminar, and what questions people might ask, so you can prepare yourself. IP gives us 10 possible questions that could arise from the presented paper. Also, here, what is this? Okay, yeah. So here, these are people who are using to try to fine-tune a large language model to do arithmetic tasks, right? So they notice, I told you that ChatGPT, GPT-4 it's not very good at math. So here they try to fine-tune these large language models so that it's better at math, right? So it's what it does. Okay, so here, let me go over some scientific domains. So I'm trained as an economist, so I don't know anything about the other topics. So here I will just cite some papers, comment briefly, but I won't go in depth. Right? These are not my fields. Here, and there's a ton every day. You see like new research, people try and publish, or you encourage you to surf the web, even ask. Your favorite language models, what is the recent research in GPT-4, ChatGPT plus your field. So here, this is I found an interesting paper on computational biology, and so here is one slide from this paper. So 10 quick tips for ChatGPT in computational biology. So these people are these fields. So I trust that they I mean, they're more competent than myself to give you advice on this. So so these are quite advice that applicable also beyond computational biology, right? So they say, be ready to the novelty, don't become too dependent, right? You should be able to work with that ChatGPT, understand the API, the usage, check the output, don't trust the output. You always have to verify. You're responsible to whatever output. If you, choose to publish what it generates, it is still your responsibility, and learn to do engineering prompt. So how to calibrate the questions to get the best answers possible. For what, say, you can use to data visualization, from ggplot, the things like R, something you know how to do in R, you want to do in Python, or you want to you publish something, it should be in black and white, but your graphs in colors, right? So you want to do this, it's something that AI can help. Write better text, summarize text. So this is pretty good at summarizing your text or someone else's text, and can give constraints to 500 words, 200 words, or you have to fit a slide, for instance. So commenting a code, so I talk about this, change variables, code efficiently, we talk about this. Okay. Chemistry. So here, like these are like a lot of articles on this. So just a couple of examples here. You can create lab procedures, create a lesson plan for you. So here's the context of teaching. Teach chemistry in the classroom. Create like homeworks and so on, exercise for students. Something that is that we see quite often, like, explain me something like I'm a fifth grader. So that's interesting how they know that the ChatGPT explain difficult concepts very often with analogy. Okay. Neuroscience. So here again, I'm not a scientist. So here I just highlight an article. So here is more in terms of so neuroscientists wonder. So they have studied the brain, right, for forever, and then you have this like artificial brain. So how can we use AI to enhance our understanding of a human brain? So it seems that the human brains and AI brains are different, even though there's this concept of neural networks and so on, but they are different. But maybe there are ways to, if we better understand the artificial brain, it can help us understand the natural brain. And some cognitive task, it seems that sometimes they come up with the same kind of answer. Okay. Astronomy and astrophysics. So here we don't talk too much in that field, right? Because we don't talk to, there's no much language with alien species and so on. But here, a scenario that people could imagine is that for instance, here I think the rover on Mars. You can see the rover on Mars, go explore Mars, and then they can send written reports on its observations, right? Okay, maybe you can log a report, say this is what I've seen, what I plan to do, and why I plan to do it, and this area, this part of Mars looks interesting, and why. So maybe write something in written language, right? So this could be an application, but it seems that at least in this article, people are a bit skeptical. I say human in the loop, etc. Medical science. So there's also a lot. This is very very hot area in medicine, healthcare, and so on. So this is like an article, and there's also another book that there's another publication in that field, I think published by Microsoft. You can also Google it. So this is a different report. So here it goes beyond LLMs, more like generative models, how they can be used. They call at Stanford. I think this was written probably with maybe some people from Stanford. I think at Stanford they have a notion of foundation models. So they're like super big, like AI models. You can build on top of that. As they call like foundation models, and how they can be used by medicine. So I found that this graph was quite interesting. That you have this what they call multimodal. Multimodal, that means that you have text, audio, images. EHR is like electronic health records, signals, from the electrocardiogram, genomics, right? It's your DNA, graphs, etc. Plus the medical literature, publications, notes from doctors, nurses, knowledge graphs. They organize the scientific knowledge in the graph. So all this is combined. That feeds into like a big, let's say, large language model, medical like ChatGPT. And then the healthcare professional, the doctor, will query, right, this model by asking questions, right? Like you talk to another colleague, a doctor, say, this patient, so they gave this, I recommend this, I highly recommend this article. They give examples, okay, a patient comes to the hospital, these are the symptoms, I've done this, doesn't work, so what do you think? And then in the ideal world, right, I think this is the objective. The AI will come up, well, these are the conditions. They will look at all the indicators. They look at the scientific literature and so on, that this patient has this condition and so on, that some random trial done somewhere found that they have these conditions, etc., etc. So this is like this is like probably the future of medicine. In economics, so this is like closer to my field. So this is a paper written by Professor Anton Korinek that I've invited in the past also to talk about AI and economics. So he has tried ChatGPT in the context of social sciences and economics in particular, and he has published that table that I found interesting. So he had like different categories, application categories of the task, right? He has asked ChatGPT. And the usefulness, that he have been rated the usefulness of this task from a scale of 1 to 3. Right? So 1 will be experimental, 2 useful, and 3 is highly useful. Right? So among the highly useful, in the category ideation, he had brainstorming to brainstorm ideas, right? Provide counter arguments, right? We saw that with the example of long COVID among teenagers. For writing is a natural language processing tool, so it's great at writing, right? So summarizing text, writing text, etc. Background research, literature research, you notice he put 1, so it's not great, right? So I agree with him. Is that you have sometimes you ask something, you come up with like wrong citations, the articles that don't exist, and something. It's a bit of a problem. So I prefer to use it myself, just to summarize articles that I know, or no reference that I know they exist, and for a refresher. Very often would be that stuff that I've read many years ago. I don't recall the details. So, okay, can you summarize this or summarize this part for me? Okay. Environmental science. So here, so people working in that field, so environmental engineering. But you see that there are like common benefits like coding assistance, debugging, syntax explanation, writing improvements, and so on. Many PhDs are ESL, right? Like myself, as English as a second language, right? So I can guarantee you, ChatGPT writes better than the average foreign student, like I was myself many years ago, right? So this is a great plus if you're not a non-native speaker. Problematic aspects, we can fabricate information, what we call hallucination, right? For ChatGPT, it stopped in September 2021. So it can be a big problem. A lot of those things have happened recently. But available in the US doesn't suffer from this problem. So it goes up, it seems to be like continuously trained. It's not accountable, of course, and it can maybe if everybody use ChatGPT for questions, we all come up with the same answer. So maybe we are going to lose creativity. So that's possible, right? This is something to be aware of. So we talk about limitations. So there are top limitations, but here we point a few of them. This slide, in fact, asks help from ChatGPT. So limited domain expertise. And this is great, right? We want to be the domain experts in our fields, right? We don't want the AI to be the expert. So far, they doesn't have that domain expertise. So this is good. Lack of context, right? So it doesn't. I mean, you can give it some context. It can improve, but sometimes the answers are not really customized to the context where you want to get your answer. Lack of originality, right? We talk about this. Bias, like all AI systems, there can be some bias that it inherits from the training data. It may lack maybe human intuition, of course, because it's not human and creativity. So we want to think that it's the case and hope it's the case, but we don't know. I don't know. So conclusion. So capabilities, you see, great capabilities as an NLP tool. So generate text, analyze data, summarize text. It's great for coding, explaining concept, etc. It can be enhanced, right? To be connected to tools, to these like plugins or API and so on. So we have great, we saw like a lot of application. This is really like a small sample, and I'm sure every day on yourself find like new applications for ChatGPT and LLMs. There's limitation, right? And luckily, it has limitations so that humans have a role to play, right? We don't have like AI doing the research, publishing, referring, the editing, publishing the journals without us, right? So we human judgment expertise is still necessary. Okay, so I linked to some, the meetup link, and if you want to get in touch. So here I put a picture of a PC. So really, for me, when I published a book on a couple of years ago on AI models, and the analogy that I had, people talk about AI is new electricity and so on. So my analogy was AI is the new PC. Right? The new PC, it came in the 1980s and really changed everything. It changed a lot, right? Who works without a PC, at least in research, right? Who works without a computer, right? So it's really everywhere. So AI is going to be to be that. So here I'm just advertising a book. But so that's it. And I mean to stop sharing my screen. Okay. And we'll be happy to get questions or comments, or share your experience or things that you have done yourself. I'm happy to hear about that. So maybe raise your hand and we'll let you talk. And we need to stop also the recording here. Okay.